gentlemen, another car stream as always. It's been interesting to see the Utah Jazz go ahead and get a W finally after the last one being from before the trade deadline. As we all know, they were in a situation where they decided to go ahead and ship out a lot of expiring contracts that they just didn't want to end up paying people for, which puts us in a situation where you don't really have many positives that you would love to be able to pull from. I wish there was more, but we ended up getting, some more tape on the likes of Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Taylor Hendricks as well. Those have always been the more interesting things to see, and there's never really a guaranteed situation where you know exactly who your rookies are. So I think the only thing that we can glean from the more recent games and the games that are to come for the Utah Jazz is who their rookies are. I think that's going to be a very big thing going forward because that tells them in this window of time where they're trying to build a contender as comfortably and as reliably as possible, exactly who those guys are. You don't want to be in a situation where you draft a bunch of potential budding stars and they're just not everything that they were, told to you that they were going to be. And if they're not going to be, you'd rather know sooner than you'd rather know later because you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you can't escape the situation you put yourself in. You don't want to be locked into a bunch of long-term contracts with a bunch of guys that aren't going to get you anywhere because then that's when people's jobs end up getting shown to be on the line. And when people get put in the hot seat and when the wins don't start adding up, that's when you start seeing people get sent on their way. And if you're Danny Ainge in that front office, you don't want to find yourself in that situation because, again, Danny Ainge is known for building contenders, and while he only has one ring to his name, being back in the late 2000s with those Celtics with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Rajon Rondo, he has built the now, successful Jason Tatum having New York Knicks. Excuse me, not the New York Knicks. Wow. The Boston Celtics before obviously he ended up switching the situation that he was in and electing to go with the Utah Jazz's front office. So as a CEO over Justin Zanuck, who is the general manager for the Utah Jazz, it puts him in a very interesting situation where he has the experience to go ahead and put guys in position to win, but you also don't have any guarantees that he will be able to do it in the long term or if it will be a continuous thing, which I think is going to be something that's very important to keep note of going forward. I wouldn't necessarily say that I am concerned because I do believe that ultimately Danny Ainge has the team's best interest in heart because he, regardless of who you are, if you're in the front office of any team and you're known for being a very successful guy, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where your reputation is on the line, right? If Danny Ainge was, old and senile, then I could understand, okay, we can't trust him. But he's also put himself in a situation where we rely on him to be kind of the Danny Ainge of old, right? And the situation demands that of him because if he doesn't end up building a contender, it's not to say that, Utah has to win the chip, but if they're not a contender, if they're not a top four team in the West consistently after, these next 4 to 6 years, then you're going to start questioning, okay, what was it all for? Why did we trade away Fontecchio? Why did we end up picking up the expiring contracts that we did just to go ahead and buy them out like we bought out Kevin Knox? Otto Porter's also on the bridge to get bought out. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, we've been able to find ourselves in a situation where you have, you're, I guess, further along than, the Spurs that you just beat. So that has to count for something, right? Not much of anything, but, something nevertheless. And in today's game, we saw some consistency. We saw Lauri Markkanen give us 26, 7, and 4. We saw Taylor Hendricks have played 26 minutes, so, season high for him. 9 points, 3 rebounds. John Collins, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist. Keontae George, 7 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists. 30 minutes, not a great shooting night for him, but overall, has 6 assists, so his playmaking is there. Colin Sexton also starting at the guard spot, 16, 2, and 10, having a double-double for him today. And then we have Jordan Clarkson, 22, 2, and 10, for him to have a double-double as well. In 33 minutes. So he actually played the game high minutes for some reason, as he tends to. I think that they're gearing up to go ahead and trade him at the deadline. I don't know how, not at the deadline, during this off season. The expectation is that, they're trying to make a play at something. What is it that we should know? We don't know. But obviously, once Quentin Grimes got traded, at the around the trade deadline, it cooled down the market for Jordan Clarkson, and just we probably wouldn't have got what we really would have wanted to or preferred to have gotten for him, which is completely understandable. And so that now puts us in a situation where, okay, we just have to get what we can out of the situation. There's no guarantees, but overall, if he continues to have more positive games like this than he has negative games where he shoots really terrible, then he might garner a little bit more respect in the offseason, and we could probably ship him out for a pretty hefty price alongside, some other pieces, but that's reasonable. They've also said Colin Sexton is on the block, so hopefully not, but you never want to rule anything out with Danny Ainge because we just saw him trade away like some fan favorites, understandably so. Chris Dunn in 20 minutes, 8 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. Walker Kessler had 10 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. Bryce Sensabaugh had 5 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. And then Johnny had no major numbers. Kira Lewis had 2 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. But they all played in, the garbage time last 3 minutes of the game. Year 7 had 3 points and a rebound, but those were also not extremely the most significant things, I would say. But overall, solid game. It was nice to have. Keontae George was not his best self. He kind of regressed. We saw this eventually coming. I thought he was going to crash down to earth the last game, but he crashed down to earth this game. I'm going to pour back over the tape and see if it was, a temporary thing, what was different about this one, or if he just, if he just regressed, because that is also something that is potential. But only time will tell, What's up, Tayton? Henson, you said, what's up? Yes, sir. It was nice to have our first win after the trade deadline. It's about time. Hey, Eugene, you think we're good? I'm inclined to believe you, brother. Tayton, you said, without getting a little lucky with picks, Danny is nothing. I mean, he's been, I don't want to say he's been the most reliable for us yet, but, hopefully with Will Hardy being the type of coach that he is, we'll be able to see some significant success in the long term, but we only will know. Key back to his old shooting splits here. Boston was a fluke. I don't know if I can buy that just yet. Now, if they don't end up winning a ring, then no point in calling it a fluke. They were contenders that never ended up being what they needed to be. The best game in the world. Yes, understandable. We said hoping they pick it up soon. Yeah. I'm hoping Taylor Hendricks honestly gets a lot out of this season. I'm curious about this. Why keep Kyra Lewis over Otto Porter? You raise a very interesting point. Otto Porter, Kyra Lewis is a young guy. I don't know if they see potential in him or if he's just a guy that's just kind of like just there. He strikes me as somebody like a Lucas Almanich that won't really do much of anything terrific for the team, and honestly, he just hasn't showed that much. I personally think he might have wanted to stay in college just a little bit longer, but I think potentially in the long term, he'll have more upside than Otto Porter will for this team long term. And worst case scenario, neither of them have a positive. Should have kept Kevin Knox, a young dude that can shoot. Kevin Knox has had his many gripes across, the different teams that he played on, and he's the exact polar opposite of what I hope happens to Keontae George. The New York Knicks force-fed him minutes, and ultimately it didn't end up panning out in the way that we wanted it to. And so I just hope that with us force-feeding Keontae George over the remainder of this season, he doesn't fall in the Kevin Knox mold. Now, Kevin Knox obviously should have been a more significant person, I would say, long-term, but I guess we just didn't see him as a possible fix to anything long, like going forward. What's good, Logic? Did Otto Porter get cut? No, they actually sent him home, and they're giving him an option to do something. I forgot. I saw an article on it, and I did not read into it as much as I should have. Um, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. I think that they're probably gonna end up buying him out though in the coming weeks if it doesn't come in the next couple of days. He said thoughts on Hendricks tonight. I mean, Taylor Hendricks, obviously, the counting numbers didn't look as good as they did last game. But that said, he still was pretty decent in my eyes. I didn't see anything too, majorly concerning coming from him. Defensively, obviously, he's a lot more polished than he is offensively polished. So there's obviously going to be a certain growth period, a learning curve for him. I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'm a believer in his ability to be successful in the long term. And I just honestly think that we'll be able to make something happen with him. I think he's worth the time investment. What I meant by Boston's a fluke is that they aren't good. More so the reason they're good is a fluke. Danny got lucky with Tatum and Brown, turned into what they did. I don't know. I don't think Danny knew. Interesting, Tatum. Interesting. Fair. Yeah, I can respect that. I can respect that. Yeah. So I think I sent him home. I think about his options, which is either staying with the Jazz or getting a buyout. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's ultimately going to come down to him. It's not going to be a guarantee either way. That he'll get minutes because he's not going to be the focal point of any team. He hasn't been a focal point or a key cog in the machine in a couple seasons. So it's really going to come down to what he feels is most comfortable for him. He said, "Made it." Of course, the game they would have missed. Yes, sir. That's the situation we find ourselves in. Let me see. He said something to do with Porter's health. Interesting. I'm gonna delve more into it actually, so I can. I might make a video about it though. I'm not sure. He said, "Is it me or is live weird? Like the format chat box is different than normal. It's a dark mode or something." Yeah, yeah. I peeped it as well. Next game against the Hawks is winnable. No Trey Young. It is. It'll be interesting to see how Keontae George responds after having this rough night outing. I would like to see him make some drastic progress, but I'm not 100% sure if he will. But I definitely think that he is definitely capable of it. Um, Chris, you said, do you think Ainge and Zanuck can pull off a splash in a trade this summer, if not relatively soon? I don't know. It depends on how much progress the rookies make this summer. If we see a lot of progress and promise from Taylor Hendricks and Keontae George specifically before the end of the season, and then a little bit of growth from Bryce Sensabaugh, then I think that is much more likely that they end up trying to gamble a little bit more. It might end up overpaying for a lengthy wing with a lot of offensive upside. Obviously, guys like Mikal Bridges are off the table now, but I wouldn't put it past them to go ahead and make that move. Now, Danny isn't one to overpay for really anybody. We saw this at the trade deadline, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I just don't think that it's extremely likely that they do more than anything. Maybe I jacked him. I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say that to him. He said, got to keep the stream up, but I'll be absent in chat. Hop on at times. No, you're good, man. I mean, this is just a short one. I'm in the car today because obviously I have my security shift, but I just wanted to chat it up with y'all for a little bit. Let me write this out real quick. We said, can they please just buy DeJounte? They get Jordan, we get DeJounte. We have DeJounte, Sexton, and Colin. They have Clarkson and the picks. We happy. I don't know if they'd be willing. I don't know if they'd be too pressed to do it. That's the issue. You think that some of these upcoming picks get moved before the draft? I do think that is extremely likely, though, average. I do think that we end up shifting our picks around to try and find a better pick, which is honestly part of the reason why I did end up making that Cooper Flag video and just like, passing that out there into the air was because in my eyes, it seemed like a situation where we could have potentially made a play at getting a higher pick, maybe not even for Cooper Flag, just for a better potentialed rookie, coming out of college or coming out of the G League, whatever the case may be. I think that ultimately it comes down to how they feel about the guys in each draft. But I definitely could see a trade that sees us trade a couple of our draft picks for just a higher one so that we can get us into a better situation with a player that has much more upside and a lot less risk. They've been playing team for years now. They got to do something. Yeah. Tatum, say you took the words right out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kurt, what's good, my guy? How's it going, man? Just trying to chop it up with you guys in between my stops, as you tell. I'm not trying to, cause too much of a ruckus while I'm on the road, but still trying to make things a little bit interesting. One thing that I do wonder is who they are really keeping their eyes on in the upcoming seasons. I have a couple, there's a couple inklings and a couple times where people are suggesting different players in particular or different situations where things might end up getting spooky and we might have the ability to make a play at somebody else's, borderline star or potential future star kind of player. Me personally, I welcome all of those talks just to get us into some situation where we could potentially do something a little bit greater than what we have been doing. But I also don't bank on it and say, oh, yeah, Danny's definitely liable to, make something happen because we've seen different sides of Dan and we know he is a guy that's going to make master trades and try and get us the most assets out of a situation. But we've also seen him being willing to be cutthroat and cut out team chemistry in the effort to just go ahead and continue to look down the line, which I give him credit for because a lot of us have the issue with not being able to put ourselves in those situations and make that decision. Like, for example, he consciously decided that even though Fontecchio is probably a positive individual and because he garners the most control from like the Italian fan base, we're still going to trade him regardless because in the long term we just don't see him in our plans. He's 28 years old. He's older than Lauri. Lauri was 26 at the time. We didn't feel comfortable, just keeping him on the roster and eventually like having to bench him effectively because Taylor Hendricks has to get minutes somewhere. And between him and Kelly Olynyk, those two guys are probably going to be the ones on the chopping block for minutes. At the same time, I didn't love it, right? I still don't love it, but I'm willing to entertain the possibility that it makes sense once you have a situation where Taylor Hendricks reaches his borderline full potential, and then instead of being a guy that's going to give you, 10 points and 5 rebounds, you see a guy that can give you like 18 and 8. Like if Taylor Hendricks can give you that and give you, 2 of 5 shooting from three, that's on a night to night basis. That's really reasonable considering also what his defensive upside is expected to be. As long as his offensive game comes along, I feel really comfortable with the player that he could potentially become. And if he is actually that good, then we find ourselves in a situation where we're like, okay, Danny, let's back up. You didn't know what you were talking about. My fault. And I would love to be wrong, but it's only a matter of time, man. It's only a matter of time. Yep. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you though, Wembanyama is a different breed of human. I know we've seen some guys that have been generational talents and just been like really phenomenal, but Wembanyama is really just something else to observe in person, or on camera facing your guys that you study on a night by night basis. Like, obviously, we understand the numbers are the numbers. You can't argue with the numbers. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But you can always skew numbers to make certain people look like they're really good at something or make other players look like they're really bad at something. Wembanyama is a classic case of a guy that's just really that freaking good. And I love that for him because in the long term, that's going to do wonders for the game of basketball. Now, obviously, everybody can't have a game like Wembanyama because everybody can't be tall, lanky, athletic, and lack the injury prone nature that most tall guys are liable to have. But Wembanyama seems to be that guy. So I hope for his continued success. And it really makes you question, well, where does he rank in the NBA right now? Because individually as a player, he might not have the same impact on wins and losses that a guy like LeBron or Anthony Davis or Jason Tatum or Stephen Curry has, but he still puts up the numbers that affect the game. And so from that standpoint, you got to give him his props and got to respect him for what he is because he's a darn good basketball player and has been for some time. Just my 2 cents on it. But we said Bryce honestly decent, not gonna lie. Yeah, I'm sure. Uh-oh, Zach, you got that purple Lauri jersey? Yes, sir. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, I skipped way down the chat. Hold on. I've been a fan for this team for 15 years. I just want a championship. Chris, I understand that, man. I felt you on that one. Kurt, you said doing okay. Good to see you and hear you. Yes, sir. I'm glad to see you. So the car stream vibe is I try. I try every now and then, really. He always sells, never buys, unless it's a freebie like John Collins. He won't ever use more than one pick to buy something. Yeah, he's not an overpayer, ever. Something for something that will allow him to make a deal out of something for sure. But just selling to put himself in a situation to do something else, nope, not part of his bag. Not part of his bag at all. Just got back from the game. Yes, sir, Zach. He said it's so hard, Kitty's offense is improving. Kids offense. Ah, I got you. Mm-hmm. Bryce looks honestly decent, not gonna lie. Bryce, honestly, I think I had higher expectations for Bryce coming out of the gate than most people had because a lot of people said that Bryce Sensabaugh was way behind Keontae George, and I just didn't see it that way. Maybe because of the way their college careers went and the fact that I know Bryce is probably a more efficient scorer of the basketball. They're both defensive liabilities. I would say that both are for different reasons, perhaps. But Bryce overall has been a lot better in his minutes that he's gotten increased at the NBA level even compared to the G League in my eyes, which is a very important thing to keep note of because a lot of us didn't expect him to be able to be out the gate, much less even over a couple seasons. So him being able to do it now is a really big thing. Bryce over Abaji. Give me a week more. Give me 4 more games of solid tape, and I might agree with you, Tatum. If Hendricks can do that, it'd be amazing. Until that day, I hate the trade. I understand. I love the idea of Hendricks staying and being that guy. Hope he gets his shooting turned around. Yeah. Yeah, something went horribly wrong with Wemby. How could somebody be that tall and skilled in the NBA? There's not. It's so highly unlikely and improbable that it occurs. Like everybody loved the Taco Fall story, but let's face it, Taco didn't have the maneuverability that guys like Wemby had. And so when you have a guy like Wemby, you gotta love him up and enjoy him as much as you can because there's no guarantees that he'll ever be existent in the NBA in the future. He said, "I admit I am impatient. I run in game out of time. I've been following since they moved to Utah. Saw the pistol play. Was the airport after the shot. Hey, being cold climate, small franchise. I'm not ignoring you, gentlemen. Hold on. We are handicapped more than other teams. Absolutely, Kurt. You raise a very good point right there. Just landed from a trip in Phoenix. Ooh, I missed the game, but just wanted to say what's up and wish you well, man. Dan, I'm glad to have you in here, man. I'm glad you made the trip safe. You are always one thing about Dan. Dan's gonna get to a bag, y'all. Dan will always be working regardless of anything. That's one thing. The day that somebody tells me Dan retired is the day I don't even know. Son, hell might have frozen over at that point. The fact that we've been relevant all these years, a lot about both management and the loyalty of the players. Absolutely, absolutely. It's a partnership at the end of the day. One cannot succeed without the other. If I'm being honest, we said if Denver or Toronto or Milwaukee can win the chip, we can hold firm, fellow Jazz diehards. One of these days, it's coming. It's coming. Trust. What's up, Dallin? How you doing, man? But yeah, the today's game was a very solid one. I didn't want to take up too much of y'all's time, but I did want to eventually, pop out here, get a little car stream going, just to say that we were able to enjoy each other's time a little bit, chat it up about the game, look towards the future with a little bit more optimism. Even though today Keontae didn't have a great game, it was nice to see the playmaking from Colin Sexton. It was nice seeing the playmaking from Jordan Clarkson. Even though it's all likely that he ends up getting shipped out this offseason, regardless, it's still enjoyable to see the guys get after. And of course, Lauri going for 26. I'll definitely take a good Lauri scoring night any day of the week because he's our picture of consistency, our sneaky athletic guy who's working on his game, trying to get a little bit more into his dribbling bag. I actually want to make a video regarding that, but I need to actually pull up his stats from the different zones as well as off of no dribbles, one dribble, 2 and 3 dribbles, and then like 4 beyond. I'm holding up okay, Don. Yeah, just at work, man. Mickey said, appreciate you. Yes, sir. Always. Appreciate the car stream. Nothing beats a good post again. Enjoy your frankness and honest perspective. I try to be. The one thing that I realized, and I think why I could never be like an announcer for a specific team, is because it's just not in me to lie to people about a particular situation. Like, if you're somebody that needs things to be sugarcoated a bit, I think I can do that. I think I can do that. But I'm not going to objectively lie to you and say that the team's capable of doing something that I clearly cannot do. Because that's just not beneficial for you. It's not beneficial for me. It's not beneficial for people of the organization. And it's not reasonable to put that level of expectation on the players themselves when I know they can't achieve it. So I have the ability to be as frank, critical, and concise, or verbose as I would like to be in any one of my rants or just a simple informational video, which is why I heavily lean on numbers, because numbers will always tell the truth of the tale, and it always puts you in a situation to where you don't really have to concern yourself with too much because the numbers are the numbers, right? We can say we see certain things, and the eye test is definitely a good metric. It's not a statistical category, but it's still a good thing to be able to rely on when you're talking about players. At the same time, though, the numbers and how they fit into what you see are really that added context that tells you everything that you need to know about a player's game. All right, Kurt, I'll see you, boy. Enjoy the rest of your night, brother. Good for somebody to actually talk about the team with. For sure, Average. You already know. Yeah, if we can't get a ring, we hang our hat on making the playoffs 41 times in 50 years. And we have the 4th biggest regular season winning percentage all time. Yeah, we handicap. Hey, it's coming. I don't know when, but it's much long overdue. I think we can all agree to that. That's the biggest thing going forward. Just being able to stay the course and get the job done when it really matters. Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Yes, sir, of course. Can never be too safe. But yeah, when we had a solid game today, Jeremy Sohan got held to 1 point in 23 minutes, which was hilarious to me. They did have the Jones brother starting at point guard, and he had a solid night, from a scoring perspective and from an assist thing. I would love to have a player like him, but I think that we're trying to make Keontae into a player like him with a stronger scoring sense, so Whether it's Keontae or Colin that ends up into being molded into that role, I'll be comfortable as long as one of them gets it down pat. The team that had one seed felt like the ones to get it done a few years ago. Yeah, and they couldn't string it together when we needed it. I missed it. What happened? We ended up beating the Spurs convincing fashion, 128-109. Lauri had a good game. Sexton had a good game. He had a double double. Clarkson had a good game. He had a double double. Keontae kind of regressed a little bit. Taylor Hendricks needs his jumper to fall. Bryce actually looked pretty good today. Those are the main notes of the game. Wemby was Wemby. The Jones brother was solid. Jeremy Sohan was rough on offense for his team, but we had a good game today. Yeah, most definitely. 16 points and 10 assists, something that we never would have seen coming. He's had multiple double doubles now this season, and I love that for him. I really would prefer they don't trade him. I think that he will be his best version of himself on this team. But if they were to trade him, I would like to see him on a team like maybe the Heat, maybe the Lakers. I feel like Sexton is a lot more consistent and reliable than D'Lo is. But like just in a situation where he can be his own man because he's a leader and he's a guy that's always going to push the young guys and the old guys towards being the best version of themselves because of his level of intensity. He's always there and he's always there to pick his guys' heads up when they're down. How's he been defensively lately? How is who? Which one? One of the rookies or Sexton? Let me know, Winfield. Put this runs over to the next. See, next matchup with them. I'll be there. Yes, sir. Hey, that sounds good. You're gonna have to tell us about that game average. Lee, you gotta hop off. All right, brother. Get some rest. Appreciate you popping in. Sexton. To me, his defense has been bearable. The thing is, even at Sexton's best, he's always going to be a slight liability because guys can always shoot over him, regardless of position. Right? He's obviously going to match up best against point guards because he's all of 6'2", maybe 6'3". But at the end of the day, he's just always going to be his usual intense self, and that's what I can appreciate. There's nothing worse than having a guy who's already physically outclassed and then he doesn't put the effort behind it to make himself a better, option for his team. But he's definitely been reliable. Drive and be safe, brother. You already know, Lee. You already know. Donovan had a 1 10 assist game as a Jazz man. Sexton of all people is more. That's wild. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It definitely is, man. Considering also how short a time that Sexton has already been here, that's the more impressive part. Bet I'll be there. Yes, sir. But yeah, man. You know, anything else y'all gentlemen wanted to talk about? I don't want to take up too much of y'all time, but because I know I did, go live late, but I did want to pop in and give y'all something to talk about. You know, it'll be interesting to see how everybody develops over these last, we got 23, 24 games of the season now. There's going to be a lot of learning experience, a lot of film, a lot of ugly tape, but I think that ultimately this is the way that we need to go to see ourselves have long-term success. How has THT been? THT was not in this one, if memory serves me right. They're finally going to run Bryce over THT. It's just a situation where THT is a talented player. He's shown flashes. He's shown the ability to do certain things, but we also know that he can't be consistent enough or do specifically the things that we need him to be able to be successful in our system. So for that reason, we tried to ship him at the trade deadline, but nobody really wanted him. His contract expires at the end of the season, so I think that they're just going to let him walk. It's the only thing that makes sense. And then with any luck, he'll end up finding a situation that it benefits him in his particular play style. Is it doable to make the plan? The roster we have right now, because of how inconsistent I know Keontae George can be and the lack of efficiency that he has on defense, I'm going to say no. Um, I don't hate this team. I think they can compete with really almost any team in the league. But the team before just had a level of chemistry you can't make up. Like that was like, you remember the Nets back when they had the meme where it was like D'Angelo Russell, Jared Dudley, and all those boys, dancing together, line dancing on the sideline during one of those games. They had chemistry like that. They weren't as egotistical, and they didn't have the same personalities, but they were just some really happy guys that really just ended up loving showing up to each game and balling their hearts out. And it's really hard to recapture that after you've traded away effectively. I think that it's possible that they get it back. I don't know how long it takes. Maybe it's an off-season of bonding this year. But overall, the gentleman before will be missed. At one point, he looked really promising. Yeah, yeah. THC has definitely had his moments. It's just that, like, he's not perfectly what they need. And so it puts him in a situation where he's either all or none. Kind of like John Collins. Like, John Collins can play a stretch five role. He can do a lot of things well. But there's also enough things that he doesn't do well for them to be like, we're really not happy with what we're getting out of you, buddy. And I think that's the rough part in their situation, at least. Hopefully the offseason fixes that. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, average man. We'll see, though. We shall see. Realistically, there's no like ultimate guarantee of what things end up looking like, but through deductive reasoning and just looking back at old people on other people's stats, whether it be counting stats, advanced metrics, whatever the case may be, just seeing what all the boys get into and what situations they're most reasonably capable of succeeding in, as well as what situations where if you put them in, you can expect them to sink and not swim. Because you'll see a lot of guys where their numbers look good, but if you put them in certain situations, they're bound to not be successful. And the worst thing you can do as a coach, as a front office and everything, is to build around guys and put guys in positions to win you games when they physically can't win you games because they don't want to be liabilities. But when you put them in position to be one, well, they have no choice because it's already not something that they're capable of doing and capable of succeeding in. And you just set them up to fail, basically. That's the biggest concern of some people, myself included, I would say. For sure. Yep. 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 But yeah, man, just vibing out, making the most of the season and what remains of it, and hoping that things continue to progress and put us in better situations. You said Taylor Hendricks is my favorite jazz man at this point. I'm not mad at it at all, Epic. I think that Taylor Hendricks honestly has the most promise because he is the person that has the intangibles that will allow him to do the most, I think, without overextending himself. And I think there's something to say about that because when you inherently have the ability to be more successful, you're more likely to be more successful. And it just comes down to how your work ethic is, if you put in the time, if you put in the hours, and if you really want it like that. Because Taylor Hendricks, I think, found himself in a situation where they're going to believe in him. They're going to put him in situations to succeed. And the only way he does not succeed is if he himself decides he doesn't want to be that guy, which is entirely possible. We've seen it happen with a lot of people. We've seen them, get complacent once they make the league. They have their paychecks and whatever. They get their initial, salary bump, whatever the case may be. And that's just all you can get out of those guys. And fair point, it happens. It is what it is. You can't really change those situations. But you also want your rookies to be really motivated guys. You want them to go into the remainder of their NBA careers feeling optimistic, not just about their future, but about the team's future, and feeling like the front office, the general manager, the ownership, everybody, even their teammates and the fans are always going to be behind them and always going to have their back and lift them up when they're down, because there's something to be said about that. You'll find yourself in a lot of situations where a lot of guys aren't put in the best positions for them individually to succeed, or they're put in situations where everybody's like, oh, you're a good player, so you should be great, right? And there's not always guys, everybody can't do that. And that's the biggest concern. What's good, Jeff? Yes, sir. A good win tonight. I wouldn't be too much concerned with Taylor Hendricks' development. I think that over these next 10 to 15 games, even, we're going to have a lot of progress from him, which will tell us exactly what we need to know about his offensive game. I would like to see him get his three ball a little bit better because I know it's in him. I think he's just a little sped up right now, and his mechanics kind of get a little bit shoddy after a certain period of time when he does get winded or when he really does get warm. So that's going to be a growth point for him, but it's going to be okay. You said missed the game, but glad to see a W at this point. Yeah, we definitely needed one. We've had enough losses. It's time to get some positives, in our category because we severely need them. Absolutely, in my eyes at least. Some people might disagree. I'm not a fan of tanking. I understand that sometimes it has to happen. Sometimes it's a necessary evil. You can say that, but when you have a team that was as fun to watch as the Jazz just were, breaking it up to me seems wrong unless you guarantee wins and potential championships down the line. That's the only way it makes sense to me. Personally, of course. Personally. Nevertheless, you can always trust that Danny Ainge is going to do Danny Ainge things. He's always going to try and sell at the highest amount that he can for pieces. And if he can try and get a steal off somebody, he's going to try and get a steal. He's not going to be big on the acquisition side of things, though there will be opportunities for that. He's more so likely and privy to building out of the draft, which, fair play, we might love it, we might hate it, whatever the case may be. It's just going to be a thing. And it's a thing that we have to live with as fans of the organization and the team and the players. And ultimately, we do wish for their long-term success. That's all you can do when you're a fan. You know what I'm saying? Love it or hate it, you watch. That's all you could do. And I think that ultimately this season is going to tell us a lot about what the rest of the picture looks like after this year. I think that this last segment of games tells us everything we need to know about our rookies. It puts us in a situation where, depending on how we play against more competitive teams and how the rookies deal with it, like how we saw Keontae's growth from playing the Warriors for the first time ever, getting welcomed to the NBA by, the greatest shooter of all time in Stephen Curry, and then how he, responded and came back that next game and played harder. He obviously had a really good offensive game, and that's not a guarantee for him going forward. We saw that tonight. But ultimately, I think that he is the guy that has the most upward potential to get the job done in a myriad of different ways and just showing us what he's truly capable of and the player that he always wanted himself to be. I think that he is motivated. I would love to see, a little bit more of Colin Sexton's mentality rub off on him because, again, remember, Colin Sexton is all of 6'2", maybe 6'3" on a great day. He's not the lankiest player. He doesn't have a lot of, length to get his hands in passing lanes and things of that nature. But you have Keontae George, who's going to have that length. He is 6'4". He has the Chris Dunn build, right? He cut down his weight for the draft. I would say that him closer to 200 pounds would be immaculate for him. He'd be able to absorb contact strongly. He's a pretty good finisher at the rim. I think adding on a little bit of weight would make him an even better finisher at the rim. And ultimately, it would put him in a situation where you feel comfortable with Keontae George no matter what situation you're in. You can always play him. You're always willing to rely on him. I think that's going to be a very big thing. He said it's also awesome that people, YouTube specifically, have started to come around with regards to Sexton. I'm right behind you all the way with that one, Jeff. That's also, one of the key parts of it, just being willing and being comfortable to trust in pieces that you might not believe in originally or feel are capable of doing the most and the highest things. I personally have been one of the biggest Colin Sexton believers since forever. You guys know that. And even on his bad days, I'm still willing to criticize him. Just as much as I love how he plays and love the energy that he brings, doesn't mean he can do no wrong, because he definitely can. All players can do wrong. LeBron James can do wrong. Kevin Durant can do wrong. Stephen Curry can do wrong. So why can't, somebody on your team do wrong? They can. They're human at the end of the day, so they deserve a certain level of grace. And there's other things that go on off screen that we don't know about. But at the same time, we still hold our guys accountable and want to see the best out of them, regardless of situation. Said Hendricks' upside is certainly starting to show. I think the plus side of Sexton, despite his size, is that he's explosive and can lunge into the passing lanes and cover more ground. You make a good point with that average. he's definitely like, especially after the type of injury that he had, the fact that he's been able to bounce back and be as athletic, as quick twitch, and as effective as he has been on offense and on defense speaks volumes to his heart and the type of player that he is. And I think long term, that's what's going to keep him in the league because everybody wants to have that bulldog energy personality. And some guys just don't have it in them for it to be them every night. Colin Sexton is one of those guys where he's going to give it to you every night. He's going to demand it of you that you be better for your own sake, not just for the team's sake, but for your own sake. And when you make a mistake, he's going to pick your head up. He's going to tell you that it's okay, right? Life happens to the best of us. Let's just bounce back. Let's get back into play. Let's make the right decisions for what time we have left. And that's really the biggest thing that we can hope for from anybody, especially for a leader on this team. We're going to have a lot of young players. We're going to need guys that are going to make them want to win. We don't want an organization that ends up like the Charlotte Hornets where they middle in mediocrity for forever and a half because the young players don't only care about getting paid, and then you don't have any like senior leadership that's going to push them to want to win games because there is no guarantees for them. And really, that's just all you can hope for those guys. Now, I think Colin Sexton is one of those perfect leaders, in my eyes anyways. But, didn't want to eat up too much of you gentlemen's time. I just wanted y'all to have the opportunity to talk about the game, hear what was going on, and then see what we could look forward to in the future going on down the road. Who do we play next, actually? It's not the Wizards, is it? Is it the Wizards? Somebody let me know in the comments. Most questioned why the Jazz seem so happy to get Sexton from Mitchell, and now we see why. Mitchell might be more talented, but Sexton has more heart and grit. I prefer the second. Yeah. And the scoring disparity between the two, I think Sexton just needs more opportunities to score the rock, and he's going to get the job done, if I'm going to be quite honest about it. I think that he's definitely more capable than most are willing to give him credit for in the beginning, but it's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. But yeah, I just want to sit, chat it up with y'all boys real quick. If there's no major thoughts, comments, or concerns, appreciate y'all tuning into the live stream. As always, check out the latest videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Say hello. We're a family. We enjoy being around each other. We enjoy talking to each other. Even when we disagree, we still have great conversations about why we disagree. And sometimes you can convince people to see your point of view. Even if we don't change our opinions, we still feel for you and understand you. With that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Thanks for tuning in this video. We'll turn in this live stream. As always, good morning, good evening, good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you gentlemen in the next one. Peace.